So I knew that all Duchenne studies were based on the only approved standardized method of testing efficacy, and that was a 6-minute walk test. And people had been priming me for that for years, that if your child stopped walking, you were not getting in a clinical trial. So I knew when we went to the study that Max had a chance of getting in, but Austin never would. We couldn't even screen. And Austin was actually fine with that. It was such a horrific experience being in a clinical trial that he was like, "Hey Max, you go try this thing out, see if it works, and if it works, I'll get it too." Like he was very fine with not getting weekly infusions. And at the time I was fine too, because I didn't understand. I thought, okay, if this drug works, Austin will get it. I had no idea how long it took to get through a clinical trial. And, the original study was only 24 weeks. I'm like, cool, 24 weeks, we find out if it works, then everybody gets it. The drug approval process, even as fast as it's possible, even the fastest pathway, Max started when he was 9.5, and the drug wasn't approved until he was 15.5. I knew that after 24 weeks, so there's 24 weeks of a double-blinded placebo-controlled study. We didn't know what was happening for 24 weeks. We didn't know if, Max was on drug. We didn't know if he was on the high dose or the low dose. We didn't know anything. There's 12 kids were randomized. 24 weeks, it was unblinded. They had another muscle biopsy. So they had, by then, each had 2 muscle biopsies. And then all the kids at 24 weeks were rolled onto drug because there were no significant safety concerns. And they actually saw improved dystrophin protein in the boys' muscles. So they saw some efficacy, early efficacy, and so they kept all the kids on drug. And then at 48 weeks, it should have ended, but they were still, they ended up, the FDA wanted to see more dystrophin, so everybody had to go for a 3rd and then a 4th muscle biopsy. We were lucky that while the FDA was screwing around, the company committed to providing drug to all 12 participants. And actually, we don't need to keep on this, but it's an interesting, I was fighting really hard for Austin to get access because I did see benefit during the study about 24 weeks in. Between 24 and 48 weeks, Max was doing tremendously well. He stopped using his wheelchair at the airport. I mean, he was doing really well. And I was fighting really hard for access. I was fighting against the company. I was fighting with the company. I was on the news. I was really a horrific human being at that point because I was really pissed off about the process. But I was able to talk the FDA and the company into allowing an older child study. And so Austin got on drug when he was 15.5 because I helped to design and implement a study across the country for 24 non-ambulant patients. And so Austin did get on drug too. So the company also started a study for 5 to 7-year-olds because under 7 wasn't allowed in the study either because they can't take accurate 6-minute walk tests in the 5 to 7 population. And so we had 24 kids in the 5 to 7-year-olds, 12 kids in Max's study, and then 24 kids in the non-ambulant study. So it was a really nice process to get these studies going. So they were only safety trials. They didn't do efficacy and endpoints, which they should have, but it got everybody on drug. So that's why I say it's like the best possible scenario. The FDA and the company were both very flexible and transparent and listened to us. They didn't take kids off drug. There have been studies, and I tell patients this all the time. One of the first questions you ask is, what is your plan between study end and approval, commercialization? Because there are plenty of companies that take all their patients off drug and wait for it to get approved. And that would have been horrible for Max. So Max has been on uninterrupted dosing of the drug despite a long regulatory process, despite no insurance coverage after commercialization. The company has continued to provide drug for 8 years.